There are people who expect some politicians to mislead us in order to better discern real truth from lies.
God expects us to be truthful. There are no exceptions for politicians.
The American Religious Town Hall meeting is now in session.
Welcome, friends, to the American Religious Town Hall meeting, where the discussion of religious, political, and social issues is meant to promote the cause of religious freedom and to help us better understand each other. And now, here is your host and moderator.
Welcome, viewers. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have an excellent topic for you and some professional panelists who are going to tell you all there is to know about the topic. So I'm going to start on my right and ask them to introduce themselves.
I'm Bishop Michael OLSON, and I serve as the Roman Catholic Bishop of the Diocese of Fort Worth, Texas.
I'm Rabbi Dan Levin. I serve as Senior Rabbi at Temple Bethel in Boca Raton, Florida.
Hi, I'm Carl Trovall. I'm Professor of Ethics and History at Concordia University in Austin, Texas.
I'm Tony Matthews, and I'm the Senior Pastor at North Garland Baptist Fellowship in Garland, Texas.
Thank you very much, panelists. And I should introduce myself. I'm Andrea Luxton, and I'm today's moderator. And I'm going to read our moderation statement for today. But before I do so, I'd like to tell you that this topic came from a viewer. You are highly valued. Please do send in your ideas to us. Here is our topic for the day. The New Westminster Insider podcast author, Jack Blanchard, asked the question, why do so many politicians lie? This is an important question as the 2022 midterm elections are soon upon us. Midterm elections will take place this next November, and our politicians are already ramping up. Some politicians are extremely ethical and honest and want to do what is best for our country. There are some politicians, however, who appear to advance their own personal agenda and actually try to mislead voters. Some networks and leaders inevitably also have spin machines, creating false narratives for virtually every issue, from the economy to COVID to international tensions both here and abroad. So we ask our panel to consider the following questions. Firstly, how do we discern if our politicians are being genuinely honest with us or are simply misleading us to advance their own personal agenda? Secondly, how do the vicious attacks between opponents actually deepen the political divide in our nation? And what responsibility do we have as faith-based citizens of the United States? And finally, to what degree and how should we hold our politicians accountable when we go to the polls this next fall? I'm going to turn to the panelists who began our conversation for their opening comments.
My opening comments were that some people expect politicians not to tell us the truth. And I think before we right away go to the problem of dishonesty in our government leaders, in our civil servants, I think we need to examine our own consciences and really, what are we expecting from our leaders? And there's an old saying that people deserve the government they get, you know, and I think this is one area where I'm not so sure how much people really value the truth or are stewards of the truth in their own lives. I think we tend to thrive for entertainment on gossip, calumny of other people's reputations, as well as detraction of their characters. I also think a great influence on this is that the influence of lobbyists and large amounts of money in our political government, to the point where I think it would almost be welcome if a politician actually advocated for their own agenda instead of sometimes those that are keeping them in office for the sake of election. And I think politicians this is very much I think a conscience problem that many public servants have is that the pressure to do what they see is right, but also to know that in doing what is right, sometimes they're not going to be rewarded at the ballot box. They're not going to be rewarded with a return to their job by our own responsibility of voting. And so they worry about things like being primaried over particular issues by outside funding with large amounts of money. And this is funding both extremes in our political life. And I think as Americans, we really need to take responsibility for our own lives, and as citizens, have our expectations really directed to the truth, which is not always going to make us happy. All right, and I think a good discernment is, does somebody say something that disappoints me, and then something else that they'll say that gives me hope? And I think that's a good grounds for a sense of getting towards the truth, which we require to live as a society and as a nation for the common good of our community.
Thank you.
So I think, much in line, Bishop, with what you're sharing, I think you do sometimes get the government that you deserve. And I think that one of the biggest challenges we face in our country today is we don't want our politicians to tell us the truth. We want them to tell us what we want to hear. And so there is all kinds of studies that have been done about confirmation bias. There was a great psychological experiment where they took a bunch of people who were good at math and gave them a math problem. And then they turned the math problem into a word problem or a story problem that went against the truth they expected to hear. So it was a math problem that showed, for example, that if you do this, then gun violence will increase. And all the people who were on the political side of the pro-gun movement got the math problem wrong because it didn't confirm what they thought they would know. And these are people who are good at math. And they did the same experiment with something that was on the liberal end, and the liberals got the math problem wrong when it didn't tell them the truth that they wanted to know either. So one of the reasons that we need our politicians to tell us the truth is because we need to be informed citizens if this republic is going to work. Ben Franklin was famously asked when he walked out of Constitution Convention, and he says, we gave you a republic if you can keep it. In order for America to work, you need to have an informed citizenry, and an informed citizenry that is willing to be active in their constitutional responsibility to create the government that they need. And that means that we need to listen to people who are telling us what we don't want to hear. One of the questions, Dr. Luxton, that you asked us was, how do we discern, what we're supposed to do? And that requires us as citizens not to just listen to the television programs or read the newspapers or the podcasts that tell us what we already know, but to force ourselves to listen to folks that we don't necessarily believe so that we can get a broader understanding of what truth actually is.
So are we saying then that we need politicians to tell the truth, but if they tell the truth, they won't get elected?
That's right.
I think actually what we need to do is we need to elect the politicians that tell us the uncomfortable truths,
right,
instead of only electing the politicians that tell us what we think we already want to hear.
Yeah. What's amazing about this is it's a problem that has been since the beginning of time in some ways, because I'm thinking, because I teach portions of the Republic, Plato's Republic, every year, and of course Plato really hated democracies for precisely this reason, is that once you start pandering to a whole group of people, they begin to tell you what you want to hear, and you tell them what they want to hear, and of course everything goes downhill. And so, to get back to the issue of truth, I mean that's why Plato and Socrates, in the grand process, were so concerned about truth, and religious leaders. I mean this is a theme through all of the scriptures, right? And about telling the truth and the search for truth and trying to understand it. But I think there's also corollary, and that is that most of us don't have a really good grasp on the truth because of our finitude. And as a result, this is why we need each other to listen to one another, to speak to one another. and to try to ask questions in such a way that we can uncover and understand where people are at, so that we can change our minds even when it's uncomfortable. And I think that this conversation needs to happen also between our political leaders. I don't have access to a lot of political leaders, but I certainly have access to all of my local political leaders. And have I taken the step to go out and ask them some hard questions? I confess that I have not, and I probably should. This program is motivating me to do just that.
Dr. Matthews,
I tell you what, I love our panelists. I tell you what, and the topics are just great. I want to ask all of us, if I may, just something. We know that citizens need the whole truth to make informed decisions. When politicians tell us half of the truth or 3/4 of the truth and they don't tell us the whole truth, is that lying? Is that deceptive? Is it? I just like to know, if they don't give us the entire picture for us to make an informed decision, you know, what do we think about that? I'm just curious.
Is there an intent to deceive? I think is really lying. I think there are things, not everybody has the right to know everything. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So, and you know, as far as security issues, things like that, you know, I think that's it. But I mean, you have to intend to deceive, and usually for some other reasons. I think this is also why greed, frankly, skews this a lot. And I think greed, there's 7 deadly sins, at least in my tradition as we talk about it, and greed's about the worst, I think, because it's always related to all the others in some way, you know, and I think that's what's caused a lot of doubt, is everybody thinks there is no truth, it's just self-interest. You know, I think it's caused incredible problems in the healthcare world. It's broken down the covenantal relationship between clinicians and patients because, for example, you read a journal article on a new drug, I always check to see who sponsored the study. Was it a pharmaceutical company? You know, do they ever sponsor one that says they're not a good product or good drug? Usually not. And I think that's bled into other areas with even our governmental authorities, CDC. You know, the issue about financial kickbacks and the development of a vaccine, and then also even the development of the virus, where we're really not sure what the story is.
And I think that's actually the part that's literally shaking the foundations of our society and our country, is the level of cynicism that we have about the institutions that are necessary to hold our society together. You see that cynicism directed towards the government. You poll people. Congress has approval ratings in the teens. You talk about people's cynicism about houses of worship and about organized religion. That level of cynicism that no one's going to tell me the truth, that people are only going after greed, they're only arguing for their own self-interests, I think is literally ripping us apart as a society. Any society is built on the idea of collaboration of the collective for its own common good. And when I can't trust the person next to me, and I can't trust the person that's elected to office, I can't trust their motivations or their exercise of power, we're in real trouble as a society. And I think that one of the things that we get to do every 2 years is to say, I'm only going to elect someone who's going to say, I'm going to tell you the whole truth and I'm going to tell you why I want to do this. And debate with me.
Yeah. Well, we know people, politicians lie. They lie all the time. Let's just be honest about it. You know, they lie. They have an agenda. And I think the citizens, it just seems like a lot of people really don't care if their politicians are truthful. They have, not everybody,
no,
but a lot of folks. And they, if it fits their agenda, we don't care what he or she says.
I mean, the only thing I want to say, I think that that's part of the purpose of journalism in our culture as well. Now, journalism has also been jaded by big money, but at the same time, I mean, there are people who are really trying to pursue finding the truth out, and I think it's important for us to continue to read and educate ourselves sure, everyone comes from a point of view, but that doesn't mean that they aren't asking good questions that reveal things for us. That's where, I mean, that's part of the accountability with politicians, at least in the midterm.
Yeah, but are we really interested in holding people accountable?
Fair enough.
Well, I think that's where our responsibility is. You look at, you know, Dan's point about the trust for Congress is so low, and yet they're always reelected.
Yeah.
You know, and it's sort of like, well, Congress is bad, but I like my representative.
Right.
You know, and also then with regard to choices, I mean, how many times do you go into the ballot box and there aren't two candidates? You know, I mean, especially for more local offices. People don't want to give themselves to this because of the high risk and scrutiny to their reputation and then also the reputations of their families. Yeah. You know, because of the narrative that's told and the attacks on people through media and social media.
I think also that when you have politicians who are acculturated to the only reason I'm here is to remain in office, as opposed to I want to seek this office because I want to affect some good. We end up, I think, with politicians that are more easily corruptible. You know, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think that focus on power for power's sake has been something that's really been difficult in our society. We've seen, I think, in the last decade, when Congress has been asked to investigate certain things, people don't even want to hear what actually happened because it might erode the support for the team they root for.
Yeah. Right.
And not many people have enough courage to say, even though that person supports everything that I think I believe in, but that person is a corrupt individual who doesn't tell the truth, I'm not going to vote for that person because the value is more. No, I think, frankly, as you said, Tony, the value is different. People will vote for the person. Yes, I expect them to lie. My expectation is they're corrupt, but they get me what I want. And that becomes, I think, also something that's very dangerous. I'm reminded of a story I once heard, though, about President Ford. When President Ford always knew he wasn't the smartest person in the room. And when he was president, he would bring together experts on different sides of things, and he would bring them into the Oval Office knowing that they disagreed, and he would say, debate. And they'd argue it out in front of him, and every once in a while he would ask a question and he would pose a new idea, and when they were done debating, he would know what he wanted to do. But I always admired that as a model of leadership because he wasn't locked into, well, this is what I have to do for my base, or this is what I have to do to win donations, or this is what is the right thing to do? And when he heard opposing views of what the right thing to do was, he was able to make a decision that he hoped would be the right decision for the country. Was it always? No, but I think we can't expect our politicians to be perfect. I think we just want them to be striving towards a better tomorrow.
I think contributing to that, though, is the multinational effects that we have today with the large multinational corporations and their influences in our government and the influence of other governments in our government, as well as, you know, it seems public service has become a launching pad for lobbying, eventually after they finish work. And I think there needs to be some sort of a clear line drawn between public service in government, and then, you know, they're not allowed to go into lobbying or something, you know what I mean, because we're not going to break the influence otherwise, because as a culture, our nation resolves everything by the free market, even things that aren't resolvable by the free market.
Very good. Thank you very much. No, this again is another complex subject. You've got the desire for truth from the politicians. You've got some people that really don't seem to worry about the truth. Whatever they hear is what they're going to follow. And yet, how do you change the way people think? If the public don't change, will the politicians change? I don't know. In a moment, we're going to come to our closing arguments, but before we do that, we're going to have a short break.
We hope you're enjoying today's program. If you'd like to learn more about the American Religious Town Hall, please visit our website at americanreligious.org. That's americanreligious.org. There you can read about the vision and history of the program, and we invite you to become a ministry partner, explore our Town Hall Estates healthcare facilities, and view past programs by clicking the appropriate menu buttons. Each week, we look forward to receiving your letters. You may write us at the address shown on your screen. Send your letters to American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. If you have a prayer request, please send it to prayerrequest@americanreligious.org. Thank you for writing and thank you for watching. Now, back to today's closing statements.
Welcome back. And as I mentioned at the beginning, this show was written by a viewer, and that shows that your views are important to us, and this has resulted in an excellent conversation today. So please do keep in contact with us. We want to hear from you, and we want to get your feedback. And now to our panelists for their closing comments.
St. Ignatius of Loyola said, "A disciple avoids rash judgment by being careful in interpreting the deeds of another. Every good Christian must be ready to give a favorable interpretation to a person's words than to condemn them. Lying is condemned because it profanes speech, which is meant to communicate the truth. The culpability is greater if the lie entails the risk of serious consequences for those who are led astray. Lying does violence to the other person by affecting one's ability to know a condition necessary for every decision, and it sows discord, it destroys society, it undermines trust, and it tears apart our social fabric."
I want to approach this from the angle of just talking to people who disagree with you, where you have strong, maybe political, even religious differences. And I think for me, some of it is the way that we ask questions. Are we asking questions to learn and to expand ourselves of the other person? Or are we asking questions to interrogate like a prosecutor, to try to put down or to justify our own belief? And I guess I would only ask that we try to cultivate the simple virtue of reaching out and caring about people that we disagree with, but then reaching out and asking them questions about why they believe what they do. And why, tell me about when you learned that, or when did you come to believe that particular position? What influenced you, so that we can have perhaps a richer understanding of the people that we disagree with, to help in the individual discourse that I hope will ultimately help the larger political discourse.
And that's one of the many things I love about our American Religious Town Hall. Though we have topics where we disagree, we're very civil. We can discuss, we learn, and I think we would like to see more of that reflected in society. And someone said something simple but yet profound. We need to not talk at a person or not talk over a person, but talk with them, even in the face of disagreement. And so it's very important. In terms of the politicians and how do we discern if our politicians are being genuine or not? Listen to what they say and watch what they do. That's very simple as well. And if we have the power of the vote, and if you do not like what your politician has done, if he or she is not honest, you have the power to vote him or her out, and that's where we are. So this is a great topic. We want to thank the viewer for submitting it.
So I'm reminded that King David was asked to keep a copy of Scripture next to him and to read from it every day. And King David was a politician. He was the leader of the people of Judea. But yet he was reminded that if you want to be the kind of leader that God needs you to be, to lead a holy society, then you have to remember what you're there for. And you're not there for power's sake. You're not there for enrichment of yourself or even your own family. You're there to serve a higher purpose. And I wish that those who were empowered with the public trust would be reminded of that important message, and perhaps a little bit more often. We live in an age where people aren't even sure there is a truth with a capital T. And so it requires us to, as you both have said, all three of you so eloquently, to approach things with curiosity, to approach things with critical thought, to try to be a better listener. I'm reminded of a lesson I was taught that said, you know, we often look at the world like a volleyball match, where our purpose is to smash the ball so the other person misses so we can score a point. Rather, perhaps we might look at dialogue as a game of catch, where I am trying to give to you in a way that you can understand, and I'm trying to receive back from you in a way that I can appreciate, and see how long we can keep that ball in the air. If we're able to do that, perhaps if we're able to, as citizens, be more curious and less judgmental, if we as citizens can try to reward truth tellers, even if they tell us uncomfortable truths, even if they tell us truths we don't want to know, we may get a better society that we can have more faith in each other and more faith in our leaders as well.
Well, thank you very much. As I've been listening today, my takeaways are, first of all, that I guess our own commitment to honesty and truth-telling and truth, and to make sure that from the point of view, especially for those of us in faith communities, that is something that actually drives us and drives the way that we see the world, and then to hold other people accountable for the same. We have the power of the vote. We also have a power of voice. We have the power of engagement in our communities to try and build communities that are interested in truth and honesty. And the politicians will follow if that's what we demand of them. I know that's maybe idealistic, but I think that is true. They need to know what we want. Then they will respond. So thank you all very much. Thank you again to our viewer who submitted today's program. The Charter of the American Religious Town Hall provides that Roman Catholics, Protestants, Jews, educators and others may appear on this program and can declare their beliefs without hesitancy, and the rest of the members of the panel will uphold and guarantee that American right to all who will appear, irrespective of race or creed, so that the rest of the world can see that here in America we believe in civil and religious freedom, not only in theory, but also in reality. And so now, friends, until next week at the same time and over the very same channel, the American Religious Town Hall meeting stands adjourned. And may the God of all of us bless all of you.